The first thing I remember sculpting started out as a blue stick of plasticine, like this one. And I was 10 years old, and I was in Guatemala, and my mom had bought me this pack of plasticine for a couple quetzales, and I decided to make a faun, like Tumnus. And I don't have that actual little blue fellow anymore because I guess it got left behind in Guatemala City. But I've decided to try and recreate it to the best of my abilities and as far as my memory will allow. And we'll see how that goes. So this is, as well as I can remember from 18 years ago, what that first blue faun looked like. These are some of the remaining little people that I made about probably within the following year of getting into plasticine. I've gotten a little squished, but I think it shows roughly the level of sculpting skill I had when I was about 10 or 11 years old. And then here is the second time I tried making a faun, and it's definitely specifically Tumnus this time, and he's got the little tail, and he's got different colors, and he's got some sort of goat-shaped legs, and the scarf, and he's got a face. Here, this one can actually stand on its own. This one's made out of Sculpey. Probably when I was in my 20s. I'm thinking the second Tumnus, I was probably 16 or 17. It's got little bits of snow. And one of my favorite details is underneath the snow, there's a little seed that sprouted because spring is on the way. I think primarily what I wanted to illustrate with these sculptures is that no matter where you begin in sculpting skill, there is potential for a lot of growth if you love it and you want it and you spend the time doing it. But also that sculpting can be incredibly fun, no matter what level of skill or ability you reach in it. So today we're going to make the stone table from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I've already started mixed up some clay to get a gray color. Although it doesn't specifically have to be gray, it could be any kind of stone. Or I'm gonna check the book and see actually if it says what color stone it is. In the very middle of this open hilltop was the stone table. It was a great grim slab of gray stone, supported on 4 upright stones. It looked very old, and it was cut all over with strange lines and figures that might be the letters of an unknown language. They gave you a curious feeling when you looked at them. So I guess it really is supposed to be gray, but whatever type of gray, or even if you do it in other colors, that would could still be acceptable. So I mixed up a bunch of white and black clay until I got the sort of gray I was looking for. This is the very first stone table that I've made. I made this years ago, so it's a little bit worn off now. But I made it initially to stand up. We have the 4 upright stones underneath and the slab on top, and then I cut away in the middle and to make it the broken stone table. The first time we hear about the stone table in the book is when the children meet the beavers, and the beavers tell them about Aslan, and then tell them that they are to meet him. That word has been sent that you are to meet him tomorrow if you can at the stone table. So it's mentioned as a meeting place. And then later on in the story, it becomes much more significant. Yeah, if you're thinking of the stone table in terms of the story of Christ and the similarities between Narnia and the Gospel, then you can see a lot of significance in what the stone table is and what it represents to the story. Almost, I could consider it like a combination of the cross and the empty tomb, and even the temple, the curtain in the temple that's torn from the top to the bottom. I do a lot of sculpting with a toothpick, but to begin with, all we need are our hands. So I'm going to break off some of this clay to save it for the upright stones in which our slab of stone will rest upon. I want to make it a little bit slab-like, so I'm actually going to like thin it out here, maybe make it a little uneven, even though it's more or less a flat piece of rock. So I'm not sure if I've chosen the right amount of rock to go off for our 4 upright stones. I'm going to divide this into 4 pieces, more or less equal-ish, and then see if they're a good size. Again, you don't want anything too exact of a shape, and so you can just, push it around till it looks kind of natural-ish. Just gonna... Now the other thing, it mentions about the stone table is that it has runes or letterings written over it. So I'm just going to use the toothpick to draw some in. I'll do it closer here so you can see. But they don't have to be any particular way. Yeah, that's kind of what I've got. So, one option that you could do as you go with the story, if you want to use more of that symbolism, is then the where it becomes the empty tomb when when Aslan resurrects, is even waiting until Resurrection Sunday and then breaking the stone table in half. But I'm going to go ahead and crack this open in half now. I just realized that the other thing that the stone table can kind of be a symbol for is the 10 Commandments, or like the law written on stone tablets, because it references in the book that the deep magic, which is essentially the law in Narnia, is written on the stone table. And like what happened to the first set of the 10 Commandments, it gets physically broken. But in this case, it's and when it's broken, it's very close to like when the curtain in the temple is torn in two from top to bottom, representing like the communion we can now have in God, we can now have with God, because the law is like fulfilled through Jesus. So there's a lot going on here symbolically in this one object. And now I happen to have a knife-y kind of thing handy, so I am going to use that to cut through the stone table, but it could just as well, or almost as well, use the toothpick or something else if you don't want to use something sharp or you don't happen to have something sharp handy. So ideally this would look a bit more the way it would look if for stone to crack than just for the way clay breaks. Maybe we'll see if we find a way to imitate that better. Okay. the way something snaps. If you happen to be doing this with Sculpey instead, then Sculpey has a much more, like a snap kind of texture you can get when you break it apart than clay will have. But that's not too bad. A little bit. I want to make sure the pieces kind of have this sort of a matching line. Maybe I should have made it more jagged like I did the one I made years ago. Yeah. And I think this time I'm gonna have these pillars like they remain upright, because that's kind of what would likely happen because they're not made out of clay. So I'm kind of like gonna re-stick them upright, but just have these bits be leaning up against them. So no, these need to be a little closer, because these would basically be falling together still. So there is the broken stone table, cracked all the way through, because Aslan is alive. "It means," said Aslan, "that though the witch knew the deep magic, there is a magic deeper still, which she did not know. Her knowledge goes back only till the dawn of time, but if she had looked a little further back into the stillness and the darkness before time dawned, she would have read there a different incantation. She would have known that when a willing victim who had committed no treachery was killed in a traitor's stead, the table would crack, and death itself would start working backward."